Good evening, everybody. Welcome to our live stream. Take two.
Hold on, Sasha.
Hold on.
Can
I'm
you
holding
bring
on.
Ash 2.0 closer to you? His head is being blocked by our logo.
Like this. I should show everyone Ash 2.0 anyway. Hi, everyone, and good evening, and welcome to the Zwaardkring stream. I am Sasha from Zwaardkring, Malaysia. And joining me tonight is Farhan, my assistant instructor. And we have a new member of the cast, Ash 2.0, our new target dummy.
So yes, the real Ash was killed in an unfortunate fencing accident, so we had to replace him.
Yes. Trust me, the target dummy is superior in every way.
Better looking too.
Better looking too.
He's going to kill me.
Tonight we're going to be discussing a few things. We're going to be discussing the basic attacks in brief, and then we're going to be discussing some of the basic defenses. We're going to have a closer look at footwork, and we're going to have a closer look at one technique which is called Absetzen. Absetzen is a technique that flows naturally from all the concepts that we've discussed so far, the basic attacks as well as Ansetzen. Yeah. Am I forgetting anything? I don't think so. So let's get started.
Let's get started.
All right.
Ash needs to take his position.
Yes. I'll put you over here. Make sure that his head isn't blocked by the logo. Now it is.
A bit closer to yourself. It's way too far off.
Yeah, I know. I'm just...
A bit more.
This way.
A bit more.
This way.
Step back. Step back. Step back. There you go.
Yeah? Right?
Yep.
All right. So, today we're going to begin with the 8 basic attacks. And the 8 basic attacks, as we've discussed the last 3 weeks. It's the third time I'm doing these, but that's only because the 8 basic attacks are so vital. They're the absolute groundwork of our martial arts. Like we discussed last week, from the 8 basic attacks, we can build up into other attacks, which is what we will start doing this session. So, what we're going to be doing is we're going to begin with our left leg forward and our right leg back. We're going to hold our sword in this guard. This guard is called the Vomtag, or from the roof. There's a few different Vomtags, but we're going to start from this one on my right side. And with the 8 basic attacks, the first one is a diagonal cut downwards. And remember that we want to end our cut in the Ansetzen with my tip.
Is that not your left side?
On my enemy, it must be mirrored. Now I'm going to my left side. The camera must be mirrored or something. I don't know.
Yeah, the camera is definitely mirrored.
Listen to what I say, not what it looks like on the camera. From here, from the left Vomtag, we're going to cut down towards the next cut 2, which is another diagonal cut. And again, I'm going to end up in the Ansetzen with my tip aimed at my enemy, forcing him to do something like that. From there, we're going to go to cut 3 and 4. Cut 3 and 4 are upwards cuts. They start in this guard where my sword is pointing backwards next to me, and is called Nebenhut, which is German for next to you guard, which is literally what it is. So from here we can cut upwards and we end in an ox over here. Then we bring our sword back down. Observe that when I have my Nebenhut on my left side, my arms are crossed. This is normal. All right. So from here we're going to cut upwards in the ox on my right hand side. From here we have horizontal cuts, 5 from ox to an ox, and 6 from ox to an ox. From here we bring our sword down to our hip. This guard is called Flug, and from the Flug we thrust forward, and we pull back into the Flug on the left side, and we thrust forward. Now, Ash here has a very nice example of why we should be thrusting forward. Because if you have a look, Ash here is wearing a facsimile of some sort of armor based on the Lorica segmentata of the Romans. But the concept remains the same, that each armor has weak spots. So when I thrust, I want to thrust over the right side. And when you observe what happens, I can hit him directly in the armpit. So if I thrust, and I thrust over the right side. Whereas if I thrust straight through the middle, I hit him straight in the middle of his armor. Now, in historical European martial arts, we have what's called bloosvechten. Bloosvechten literally means naked fighting, but what they mean is without armor. But that doesn't mean that we are entirely unarmored. Humans have this sternum in the middle, so we want to thrust not directly at the sternum. We want to thrust slightly to the left or slightly to the right. At the same time, I want to hold my sword horizontal so that I can penetrate the ribs, which are aligned horizontally as well. So when I align my sword horizontal and I thrust at the ribs, it should slip right in between. Whereas if I held my sword vertical and I thrust like that, then it would get stuck. I mean, it will probably penetrate the ribs. Swords are quite sharp, might break a few ribs, but one, it would have more friction, less damage, and two, you would have trouble retrieving your sword from your enemy. That's why you get the images in movies where they stab someone and they have to like put their feet on their chest to retrieve their sword. All the same. So, basic strikes. Cut 1, diagonal. Cut 2, diagonal. Remember, we have to pull back our hands to keep them safe from our enemies. 5, 6, 7. Oh, shoot. 7. Can't go further back. 8. 9, 7, and 8. One more time. So from my hip to 7, I start on the right. I thrust over right. And 8, I start on the left. And I thrust over left. Yeah. So if we look at these cuts and we look at them against a target, let's see. Is Ash in view right now? No, he is not. There we go. That's better. Maybe I should be facing him so you guys can. I'll be a little bit obscured by Ash, but hopefully you'll be able to see where I'm aiming. So here the idea is that with cut 1, you can see that I'm hitting Ash in the shoulder, just in the nape of the neck. Then cut 2 is on the other side in the shoulder. Is this visible, Farhan?
Yep.
All right, perfect.
Kinda. The Unterhaus probably won't be able to see.
Unterhaus, let's try. So Unterhaus, I cut from below here, and ideally I want to end up underneath his armpit, right over here. And the Unterhaus from the other side, you know what, I'm going to sneak a little over the left. I should hit the armpit over here. That should be my target with the Unterhaus. So with the Unterhaus, this is something that people often get wrong. They tend to aim at low targets because they think, oh, this is a low cut. I'm supposed to hit low targets, but that's not true. Low targets reduce your range, so I want to hit my target as high as I can, close to the maximum range that I can, staying safe as I can, by outranging my enemy. So Unterhaus, I want to hit them relatively high as possible. Then
the best way to think about the Unterhaus is the fact that you're supposed to end up in Ox at the end.
Absolutely true. So I'm supposed to, if I cut over right, I'm supposed to absolutely true end up in the Ox over here. And over left, Ox over here. Then the cuts 5 and 6, we cut at the height, at the neck, and 6, we cut at the neck from the other side. And then 7 and 8, as previously indicated, we aim for the left and the right side of your opponent. You definitely can't see these when like this, so let me just show like this. Maybe this will work better closer because this is blocking. There we go. So kind of thrust him over left and over right. Now, in Ringeck and in the Lichtenauer tradition, they say that basically you're aiming for one of 4 targets. If you extend your arm sideways, what you get is you get a sort of cross, with your body being the vertical axis and your arms being the horizontal axis. And thus we can divide our targets into 4 quadrants. We have upper left and upper right, lower left, and lower right. So with these quadrants, we can easily tell cuts 1 and 2 are supposed to be upper left and upper right quadrant respectively. Cuts 3 and 4, lower left and lower right. Cuts 5 and 6, upper left, upper right again. And thrusts, lower left, lower right again. So we see that in this way, if we divide the cuts into 4 angles, then we can logically follow that I only need to defend in one of 4 ways. I need to have a defense against high left cuts. I need to have a defense against high right cuts. I need to defense against low left cuts, and I need to defense against low right cuts. So those are what we have dubbed the 4 basic defenses. And they are very simple. 4 basic defenses. Now, the first thing, the best way to defend is to not be where the weapon is. Right? This makes total sense. Right? That you don't want to be where the weapon currently is. You don't want to occupy the same physical space. Because if you do, that means that the weapon is stabbing you. So our first defense, generally, what we recommend is to void the attack. To take a step backwards. As the attacker is stepping in with his cut, the defender is stepping backwards with his defense. If you do this with every cut, you will always stay out of reach of your opponent, because your opponent will start out of reach, he will step forward to get into reach, and then you step backwards to get out of reach again. Simple. So our first defense will be taking a step backwards in our basic defenses. But this is not foolproof, right? Guy like me, I take big steps. I can take very big steps. Maybe I take a bigger step than you, and I might still be in reach at the end of my cut.
You
so what I
take
got
a bigger step than me.
Yeah, if you compare it with Farhan is like this tall. You must be this tall too. Okay, never mind. So Farhan is very small, and likewise his footwork needs to be adjusted for that. So I can outpace Farhan if I wanted to. So what Farhan needs to do is he also needs to defend. Me too. Obviously I also got to defend. I can't rely on avoiding the attack alone. So I want to make an attack that blocks the attacks from the upper left quadrant. So when I step back, I'm simply going to put my sword in front of it, like this. And as you can tell, this way I block my entire upper left quadrant. I don't put my sword too close to me, because if I put my sword too close to me, my left quadrant isn't entirely defended. Right? Someone might just, with a flick of the wrist, can just twist the blade and get around my defense. So I need to defend a fair distance away from myself. In fact, the further I can keep my enemy's weapon away from me, the better it generally is, generally speaking, because at the same time, I don't want to overextend my defense. If I really cut at my enemy's weapon and I overextend my defense, bringing my sword back, so imagine my enemy would attack me from the other side. I have to bring my sword all the way back to this side. Right? So I want to keep my sword relatively close, but not too close, so that I can quickly shift from one side to the other. The most common attack is just, I attack you over left. and then I attack you over right. So, got to defend over left. Got to defend quickly over right. Don't want to push his sword all the way back and leaving myself exposed. So yeah, when you defend, take a step backwards, put your sword in front of it. How I've learned this a long time ago is that I form a little roof, a little slanted roof above my head. And you can tell that the tip of my sword is more or less directly above my head. If I extend the line straight up from my head, you can tell that my tip is right above my head. And interestingly, when I move to defend over the other side, the tip is still directly over my head. So what that means is that when I shift my defense from left to right, the tip stays more or less in the same position. Here. Few things about the arm position. Do not overstretch your arm. Do not lock up your arm. We've talked about this in the first lesson. But you basically never want to lock up your arm. So what we mean by that is just stretch it up to the point where your arm is completely straight. You always want to keep a little bit of a bend in your wrist, in your elbow, so that you can maintain strength in that place. Because as soon as you lock your arm, you lose basically all strength. So when I block, my arm should be at a bit of an angle. Block, arm should be a bit of an angle. Left, right, so you can just move forward, move backwards, and as I step, every time my guard changes. Left, right, right. I can just do this. You can do this at home, right? So defending isn't like a kind of movement. Short movements, enough to block off the line of attack of your opponent. Nothing more. Which is also what makes these defenses basic, because they are literally nothing more. They stop you from dying. They don't do much more than that. I'm going to look at some more interesting defenses as we continue this course. But the basic defenses, one thing that basic defenses do really well is keeping you safe. Yeah, you can't attack from the basic defenses easily, but they do a really good job at keeping you safe. So, and as long as you keep yourself safe, remember the first rule, Farhan? You think the people in the chat remember?
Probably not.
Probably not. You have 10 seconds to prove me wrong. 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The first rule was... Faris, wait, hold on. We actually have audience interaction here.
Yes, Faris remembers.
Faris remembers?
Yeah. You got it right. Stay safe.
All right, stay safe. Yes, the first rule is to stay safe. So the basic defenses do that really well. They keep you very safe. All right? They don't let you win the fight, but they keep you very safe. So yeah, basic defense, basic defense. So then the same we can do from our lower. I can do the same to protect against the lower. All I need to do is sort of invert the angle and guard low. But as you can see, my sword is still quite high. Right? I'm not defending here against a low attack. My sword is still quite high. Because let's remember, why do I need to defend high against low attacks? Audience interaction, Mark 2, go. 10 seconds. 9, 8.
We have to remember that the stream is delayed by a few seconds as well.
Oh, right. Yes, that's probably it. So I should just banter a bit more until people can answer.
I need to remember.
I need to remember that.
I don't see any responses, though.
I don't see any responses. Because the attacks are high, right? Remember, attacks from below still attack a high target. So I can't get away with just blocking low. I need to guard a little higher than that, so I can take off the angle. And again, the same rule applies for the lower defenses as for the high defenses. They angle slightly towards the middle. In this case, you'll see the tip is slightly below my center of gravity. And my arms are bent. They aren't always stretched out. They are bent. I can maintain strength. And just like the high attacks, I can switch from left to right without any issue. All right. And if you want to try this at home, I will tell you the mistake you're going to be making. You think, from a high guard, I'm going to defend low. Okay, now I'm going to defend low on the other side. Yeah, you make a big cut over the other side. All right, defend low the other side, and you keep cutting against that low target. This is just a fantastic waste of time, right? If I'm low and I'm getting attacked over the other side, all I need to do is shift my guard to the other side. I don't need to make some sort of large, elaborate cut over the left. How often I have seen this. It's like one of those things that all the newbies get wrong. Right, Farhan?
Oh, I've seen some worse mistakes than that.
Worse mistakes.
Wasting their energy blocking is not the worst thing I've ever seen them do.
Okay. Have you seen worse mistakes when it comes to basic blocks?
Yes.
All right, do enlighten us.
No, the worst mistakes in their blocking is they panic and they don't block. They think they're blocking, but they're just throwing the sword in front of them. You know?
Right.
The block. This is a block. But what they tend to do is like, and it becomes a panic swing. And it's a panic swing that doesn't stop the opponent's cut. And at best, you know, they prevent the attacker from approaching. At worst, it's a double hit.
Yeah.
That is the worst one.
Right, I feel you. So yeah, when you prevent your like a sort of panic swing and get a double hit, yeah, we should do a lesson on that sometime. Why you see so many double hits in tournaments?
We should remind them that a block is a block. You don't have to extend all the way out. Just nice and close. Maintain your structure. Receive the blow on the sword, and then continue.
Yes, definitely. If you're doing the basic blocks, then you gotta remember that that's what you're doing. You're blocking. So basic block left, basic block right. I'm also not cutting against the sword. I'm not cutting the opponent's sword down. You can do that, but it's a different move. Right? I want to basic defense. And the idea is you can receive a tremendously strong blow with a basic block and be fine if your structure, like Farhan said, if your stance is good and you don't overstretch your arm, you can receive a tremendously strong blow and keep going because the basic block is a very firm structure to build from.
I think it's also helpful if we explain that a basic block does not mean that you're an amateur fencer, that you are not using a better defense. A basic block just simply means that this is the simplest defense you can use, and sometimes it's the simplest defense you can use is the best defense. So it's not, if you're using these like simple blocks, it doesn't mean that you're not a good fighter. It doesn't mean that, you know, oh, I haven't progressed enough. It just might simply mean that in that particular situation, you're trying to stop the guy from hitting you. And this was the quickest defense you could throw up, and no one's going to judge you for using it. I use basic blocks all the time. Sasha uses basic blocks all the time. There's nothing wrong with it.
No, I can argue that some people say like, oh, hey, but don't you teach like, okay, you gotta stay safe, and you do that by using the superior attack, right? That's the attack that both attacks and defends at the same time. So shouldn't you always be trying to use the superior attacks? But the issue is that you don't always have the chance to use the superior attack. Superior attacks depend a lot on circumstance. It depends on like, okay, you have to be the right distance. You have to like read your opponent correctly. Yeah, your weight must be shifted at exactly the right point. Your timing's got to be correct. So there's a lot of circumstance that comes with these superior attacks. Instead, these basic blocks, they're very general, right? I say these basic blocks work against most attacks coming from the top left. This basic block, it works against most attacks coming from top right. They're very general defenses. They will defend you and keep you safe against most attacks. They won't advance the fight in your favor, yes, but at the same time they won't advance the fight in the enemy's favor also, and sometimes it's the only thing you want. Sometimes you will just want to bide your time and so that you get into the right measure, get into the right circumstance for you to unleash that devastating counterattack. Superior
sometimes
attack.
he's just blocking so you can get close to grab him.
Yes, that is also one of my favorite moves. Yes, block, run in, grab.
Okay. Do we have any questions about the?
Yes, questions about the basic defenses.
I don't think. I think it's quite straightforward.
I think so. Just demonstrate them a few more times while people come up with questions.
There's one more thing I would like to bring up as Sasha is demonstrating the basic blocks. Is that there's a reason that he's stepping, and it's the same reason you step with your cuts. It's not that you must step with a block or you must step with a cut, but rather that by stepping with the block and stepping with the cut, you are actually rotating your body into a more stable position so that you're turning your hips into the block. And it's very important, just like a cut. You turn your hips, you turn the core to face the cut and to receive it. If you don't, you end up with a slightly weaker block. It might not be horrible, but you lose structure. So the reason we tell you step with a block is usually so that you turn your body, maintain your structure. It's not impossible to block without stepping. It's just if you're a beginner, this kind of helps you build the habit of turning your hips as you move your sword from side to side.
As you may be observing, as I'm blocking without stepping, I'm still shifting my weight from one foot to the other. Oh yeah. All the same. Any questions, Ron, in the chat?
Faris said I answered his question before he could ask it.
All right. Okay, fantastic. Good. So I wanted to look a little bit at footwork. Fran, what's our time right now?
It's half an hour in. We got time.
Half an hour. We got time. Plenty of time. Oodles of time. Eons of time. Okay. So, footwork. Sorry, Ash, you're going to have to move away this time, else you're in the way. That sounds very much like regular Ash.
No, he hasn't said anything strange yet.
He hasn't said it. Is he in the chat?
No, he's nowhere here.
Okay. So yeah, footwork. So like I said, we start in left leg forward, right foot back. And from here, what we've looked at thus far is taking steps forward and taking steps backward. However, in the first lesson, we've also considered the Zornhau, where we took a diagonal step forward, this one. And likewise, we can take a diagonal step forward to the left as well. There are a few more footworks that we can look at. And I wanted to run over a small exercise that you can do while you're training. There's an exercise you can do at home. You actually don't need a lot of space. You don't even need a sword for this. I'm going to put my sword aside for a moment. All you need is a cross on the floor, which I have right here. Ron, can you see the cross on the floor?
Yep.
Yep. All right, fantastic. So yeah, so all you need is a cross on the floor that divides into, again, 4 partitions: front left, front right, rear left, and rear right. So what you can do is you can start, what you must do is you start with your left foot in the front left quadrant and your rear foot in the rear right quadrant, like that. And from here, we're going to do a small routine that illustrates all footwork. And you can do this at home. I guarantee you it will take a few tries to get it right. So I don't know, cut this part out and put it on a loop so you can follow along.
Just to remind everyone that our video is mirrored for some reason. So whenever Sasha says right, it looks like it's left. Uh, we don't know why.
I can probably fix that, but not right now. I'll need to do it after the stream. So that's it. Left foot for, actually, if it's mirrored, it doesn't really matter. Then you do it mirrored, you still end up doing all the footwork. So left foot front, right foot in the rear right quadrant. And we're just going to go over all the different footworks that we have. So the first one is just a step forward. So you advance your right foot in the front right quadrant. And then we step back. So back to our normal position. So step 1 and step 2, forward and back. Step 3 and step 4 are backwards. So I take my left foot and place it in the left rear quadrant. And then I take my left foot and place it back into the front left quadrant. Right? So that's 4 steps. 1, 2, 3, 4. And back to where I started. Now I'm going to make diagonal forward steps. So I'm going to go diagonal right. And what you'll notice is that both of my feet, when I do that, it's a little 1-2 step, and both of my feet end up in the front right quadrant. Right? And then I retreat diagonally to the left first. And when I do that, it's a little hop. My right foot is in the front right quadrant. My left foot is in the rear left quadrant. And then we retreat back 1 more step. And we advance 1 more step. So we did a little zag on the diagonal axis. So now we're going to do a zig on the other diagonal axis. So I'm going to step forward, and both my feet will be planted in the front left quadrant. Here. And then I'm going to zig back, and forward, so that I'm back in my starting position. Let's try that from the start. So step forward and back, step forward, backwards and forward. Step diagonal and diagonally back, and diagonally forward. Then reverse diagonal, left and forward and left. All right, still with me so far? Should we do that 1 more time? On?
Yep, we're all here.
Okay, yeah. You gotta answer when I ask, because else I'm scared, like, oh my god, did I disconnect? Panic!
It's fine. I think one thing else we need to remind people that when we say step diagonally, it's actually 2 steps.
Yeah, it's like a little hop. 1, 2. 1, 2. 2. 1, 2. You don't want to be dragging your feet. It's not like drag. It's not some sort of dance. Also, you want to stay low in your knees. You don't want to, your head should maintain at the same level. You don't want to like bob your head every time you step. No. So every time you step, your head should more or less remain the same height. Right? So since we did a lot of talking from the beginning, step forward, step back, step backwards, step forwards, diagonal and back, diagonal back, and diagonally forward. Other diagonal and back, other diagonal and back. Starting position. From here, we're going to directly to the right and then directly to the left. So in that case, it's also a double step like the diagonals, where I'm going to bring my right foot to the right front quadrant and my left foot to the right rear quadrant. This is a little step. From here, you get this. I step to the side and back. Step to the side and back. Right? And, oops, I'm doing this wrong. As I'm stepping back, I want to have my left foot backwards, because then we're going to step to the left. Left and back. Step to the left and back. Right? So that brings us all to the complete. I believe that's all the moves that we have. We've moved in all the angles. Forward, backward, sideways, diagonal. We've moved in all directions. So from the start, 1, step forward, 2, step back, 3, back, 4, step forward, 5, diagonal, hop, 1, 2, and 6, diagonal back, 1, 2, and 1 more back, 7, 1, 2 back, and 8, back into the starting position, and 9, diagonal forward, other diagonal back, other diagonal back, other diagonal forward. That's 10, 11, and 12. Then 13 to the right, and then back, and then 14 to the left, and then back. 16 steps in total. So now I'll just count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. 9. Oh, wait. Diagonal. All right, I lost count. Sorry. My bad.
To be fair, though, I will admit I can never get this right.
You haven't done this often enough then.
I have not.
1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, diagonals. 5, 6, 7, 8. Other diagonal. 9, 10, 11, 12. Left, right. 13, 14, 15, 16. I'm back where I started. More or less, I had my wrong foot forward. So yeah, when you're at home, you can practice this footwork. This roughly encompasses all the footwork all the footworks that we have in sword fighting. You have some weird things where your leg crosses behind, but that's just a side step with, extra steps. Not going to look into that right now. Let's go back to sword fighting. Let's put Ash to the test. See if Ash can defeat me with a thrust. Now, since he's a dummy, I estimate his chances to be quite low. How's he here, Farhan? I know he's blocking the side cam, but can you see him clearly from the main cam?
He's fine.
Sorry?
He's fine.
He's fine. Okay, fantastic.
I had to wait for the stream to catch up, so I knew where he was.
We need to fix that. Okay, so...
you can fix that. It's literally how Twitch works.
Ash is going to... Oh, don't lose your arm here. He got disarmed. Okay. So Ash is thrusting at me, and he has his hands forward. Come on, a little bit further forward, Ash. You can do it. Oh man, he's creaking. Ash, you're getting old. Come on, you can do it. Very good. So Ash is thrusting forward at me, and I'm going to use a counter thrust to breaking his. So he's thrusting at me. He's doing it all wrong because he's thrusting through the middle. Ash, I taught you better than this. All the same. I stand ready. Left foot forward in my fluke guard. So that's here. I stand ready to receive his thrust. Now, I could defend against his thrust with a basic guard. Come on, Ash. You can do it. Could defend against his thrust with a basic defense. In this case, a high defense, because he thrusted quite high. But from here, I am not hurting him, and I want to hurt Ash more. So what can I do? Well, we also said that in my cuts, I need to do Ansetzen, aiming my sword at my opponent. And from here, you see, like, hey, I can push him aside, and I can thrust right in here. So I'm going to do that in one smooth move. Okay, hold your thrust, Ash. I know you can do it. So I'm going to do that in one smooth move. I'm going to start my left leg forward, my right leg back. I'm going to start in fluke. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to move first to a left fluke to catch his sword. And then I'm going to move to a left ox while practicing Ansetzen to bring my sword high enough. And as you can see, from the left fluke, my sword is binding quite low, and he can push back. So I want to bring my sword, the strong of my sword, to his weak. We should probably explain that. And from there, I can push him aside and thrust in to his neck, or body, or face, whatever you please. All right, Ash. Oh man, he's creaking so badly. All right, you can do it. So what this looks like is a sort of scooping motion. Right? I'm scooping the tip of his sword up with my crossguard, and I'm thrusting at the same time. Now, mind you, I'm explaining this in steps, but when you do this fluently, you get one smooth thrust that goes through his neck. You know, it's nice that I can like thrust at him without having to worry about injuring the other guy. Come on, you can do it, Ash. There we go. So, scooping motion, and as I am scooping, I am moving my sword forward to thrust at him. And this is one example of the superior attack, of an attack that both attacks and defends at the same time. So he is ready to thrust at me. I stand ready, and as he attacks, my footwork, I should step slightly to the right. I want to be out of the way of his thrust. If I fail to catch his thrust, I want to be ready for that. So I want to step out of the way of his thrust. See, now his thrust goes past me. And from there, I can catch his sword and thrust in. Anything you would like to add, Fran?
Not at this moment.
Not at this moment. Okay, come on, you can do it. Hold up your arms. There we go. So yeah, he is thrusting at me. The sword is aimed at me, so I step to the side. I thrust him into his chest. This is so nice. I don't have to worry about like hurting him, so I can just thrust full strength. We should bring this dummy to our physical classes next time.
Sure.
The joints are getting a bit.
I want to break down a bit more on what you're doing.
All right. So step by step then.
Yes.
All right. So again, start with my left foot forward, my right foot back. My sword is resting close to me in fluke. My hands are close to me because I don't want him to snipe my hands, hit my hands. So I want to keep it nice and close. From there, my first move is to step to the right to avoid his attack. And I want to, at the same time, I want to bring my sword from my right side, from my right fluke to my left fluke. Here. From there, I am defended, and I can bring my sword up into an ox. And as you notice, I am taking his sword with me. His sword is in my crossguard now, or rather in my shield. So from here, when I'm in ox, I get superior leverage against him. From there, I can thrust forward into his neck. I'm aiming for his neck. Okay, hold on. There we go. That's much better. Almost. Come on. Drooping a bit.
I want to point out that the initial defense of stepping aside and voiding is also combined with a basic block. You notice he's just pushing the sword aside with his own blade, and that's pretty much just a basic block. It's followed by a thrust. So it's kind of, you're performing a basic block, and then you're following it up with something because your hands are in a strong position to follow it up by putting your point into your opponent. And this is basically how it's described in the manuals. As in, the manual, all the Lichtenauer manuals all say, you bring your sword up, you block, and then you set your point on your opponent.
Thrust in.
See? Sasha, can we do it from the other side first?
From the other side. So I change position with Ash too.
No. You just, instead of moving to your right, move to your left.
Okay, sure. I can do it from the other side.
Yeah. So you don't have to reposition everyone.
So from here. So from the other side, it's the same, only now I start with my right foot forward. And again, I bring my sword up to block against it, stepping to the side, out of his thrust. Bring it to an ox, and thrust him in the neck.
Yeah, so as you can see, the first move is actually a basic block. And that's why we started the class with the basic blocks, so you guys know what he's doing there. And then it's followed by setting your point on your opponent.
Yeah,
And this is very important because Absetzen, Absetzen translates to setting on, which is setting your point on your opponent. And
that's Ansetzen. Absetzen is cutting off, setting off.
yeah, setting off. So you're like setting off his attack and putting it in. Faris is asking, you're stepping forward or diagonally?
Well, my opponent, I need to step diagonally forward because my opponent is not moving. But generally, when your opponent is thrusting at you, he will be coming towards you. You actually do not need to. You do not need to step forward because your opponent will be coming towards you within his reach, and thus we don't need to step forward anymore to achieve our reach because our opponent is, like running forward. My opponent is not moving at this point in time, so I need to step diagonally forward to achieve my reach.
You could step forward diagonally as he's coming in.
So I'm stepping forward diagonally.
Even if he's closing the distance, you can still step forward diagonally.
True, but you don't want to get too close where when you have your ox, you can't thrust forward anymore, right? So you must be able to set aside his sword, have enough space to actually thrust at your opponent. Because your sword does need to gather a bit of momentum before you can effectively thrust. Now, occasionally you see in movies that they're like, right, holding the sword really close to their throat. Yes, this is dangerous, but it's not an effective thrusting position. Sure, you can do some damage, but not nearly. If I were here, right, I have a little bit of distance, then I can really put my arm strength in there. Because here, when I put my tip against my enemy, all I can do is push in, but my sword won't have any momentum. So if my sword has any momentum, then I can make a truly devastating thrust. So I want to get the distance right? So my opponent is standing ready to thrust. I want to get my distance so that I can put my basic defense here and then thrust in while having maybe half a meter from his face. I have plenty of time to accelerate. Now, mind you, I say my opponent is not moving, and thus I need to step diagonally forward. You might have to do this as well. Your opponent isn't perfect. Maybe he has misjudged his measure, and he is too far. Then you need to step forward to close in with him as well. Maybe he started too close. Then you might need to step backwards to get the right measure for you. Your footwork is strongly dependent on where your opponent started, how far your opponent is stepping in, if at all. Like if your opponent is, I don't know, making some sort of retreating cut, you might need to really lunge in there to get your measure.
Maybe you want to demonstrate what it looks like if your opponent's too far or too close.
All right, so if my opponent is too far, okay, oh, I've disarmed him. Okay, so downside, I can't glue these down, because if I glue these down, then I can't move them anymore. But at the same time, come on, there we go. All right, now this one. All right, that's better. Okay, sometimes it just needs a little fixing. So, if my opponent is too far, I need to really go back here. If my opponent is too far, really too far to do any damage, he couldn't even hit me if he lunged, then I can easily step forward straight at my opponent. All right, just directly forward straight at my opponent, because I need to cross that distance from me to him. If my opponent is in moderate range, right, I can make a diagonal step, or I can even take a fully, if he's even closer than that, but observe that at this point his tip is practically in my face, I can make a sideways step, right? So not even diagonal forward or sideways. If he is really close for some reason, we're like, I don't know, he got his tip on me, I may need to diagonally retreat backwards in order to I get the move out. So yeah, I can just lunge in there with a forward step, depending if if he is attacking from really far. If he's attacking from a moderate distance, a diagonal step forward is fine. If he's just right in his measure, I should be able to get him with just a sideways step. And like I said, if he's really close, then maybe I need to back off a little to get my right measure in there. Clear? That's where the 20-second lag really kills us.
It's more like 10-second lag, but it's fine.
Same difference. So, yeah.
No,
so your footwork, entirely depends on his footwork and his distance. In fact, it also depends on his reach. If I'm doing it with a single sword, right, with a one-handed sword, and my opponent is wielding some sort of two-handed sword, yes, I'll probably need to step a lot closer to him because he can attack way before I can even consider attacking. And vice versa, right? If I have a long sword and he thrusts at me with, a messer or something like that, then I will probably need to back off a bit because else my sword will be too close. I don't know how I let him get so close with the messer. I mean, I have a long sword. I should be keeping him at a distance, but it's a fight and funny things can happen. So it entirely depends on your opponent's weapon. Interestingly, this move works perfectly fine against spears. We had a spear workshop, and people were thrusting, and the technique we taught them was basically this. Put aside, thrust in. Only with one hand, because with the other hand was like put aside, grab spear, thrust in, kind of idea. So yeah, which is nice that this technique, like it follows, you can apply it on basically any weapon you practice with, as long as your opponent is thrusting at you. So maybe not so much with saber. Anything you want to add, Farhan?
Sabers thrust a lot. This move would be brilliant against them, man.
Okay, I have not done enough saber.
No, you've done too much saber against Lawrence.
I guess so.
He loves that cross-cutting thing.
He does love his cross-cutting thing.
Yeah, but as far as the technique goes, I really don't have much. It's a very simple technique.
Yeah, and it really combines all the steps of the basics. It combines basic footwork with basic defenses, and then the technique of Absetzen, the concept of Absetzen, setting your tip on your opponent, which really helps with this. I would like to add that once you get good at this technique, once you get good, the basic defense doesn't really happen anymore. You really just scoop up and then thrust in. You don't really do the individual steps. It's a smooth motion. It's not like block, ox, like that. No, it's just starting from fluke. I just thrust in. That was effective. I just thrust in and I topple my opponent down.
Well, it's super effective then.
So yeah. And his hat.
Okay, while setting that up, Faris is asking a question.
All right, let's hear it. It's okay, I prefer people who ask questions.
It's a bit off topic, but I suppose it still works to our footwork. He wants to know the difference between a gathering step and an advancing step.
Gathering step and advancing step. Okay, so Farhan, go.
Oh, wow, me? Oh, man,
yes.
I have to stand up to do that.
Or you can instruct me.
Actually, okay. They're kind of the same thing.
Pretty much.
We don't usually use the terms gathering step and advancing step in the Lichtenauer tradition.
We tend to use single step.
I will explain something. See if it answers you. I'm going to have to step back a little bit, but you're going to have to watch my footwork. Here. Faris, this is your fault for making me stand up. Anyway, I'm going to have to switch my laptop audio for a bit. Might get bad.
Oh no.
Okay, so the basic footwork that we're used to is the advancing step, the passing step, we call it. It's just basically the back leg passes front leg and takes position in front. This is the basic passing step that we do with longsword. You've got your sword up there and you go in. These are advancing steps. Any step that you take towards your opponent is an advancing step. But a gathering step is slightly different in the sense that it's used either with a lunge, so you're lunging out, you might be off balance and you don't want to recover. Because usually when you get into sword techniques, you lunge and recover. But sometimes you don't want to recover, so you lunge and then you gather. So you pull your foot up instead of springing back to your original position. What's interesting thing is that you must remember that this is very different from the other type of step which exists in the Lichtenauer tradition, which is called a step, but it looks like a gathering step. Basically, in the Lichtenauer tradition, you've got the passing step, which is very easy, very one step forward. But when we sidestep, this is a gathering step, but it's always called just a single step. It counts as one step for the purposes of Lichtenauer longsword. So when I'm back here and I'm doing the, say, a zone, how I'm stepping off to the side, I step, my foot follows, and this is one step. This is not a gathering step. This is a single step as far as Lichtenauer is concerned. As far as you read the treatise, they've always considered this a single step. So, very simple, lunge and recover is a lunge, lunge, gather is a gathering step, side step, foot follows up is not a gathering step, it's a single step. If you're confused, welcome to HEMA.
If you're confused, you should be. All right, very good.
Yes. Faris has been reading Meyer. That's why he's gotten very confused.
Right. Well, true.
Meyer complicates this with one more level, but we'll not go into at this level this time.
All right. Very good. Yeah. So that's basically it for this week. We did the fences. We did the footwork. Right. So, if you're like, hey, I want to do some practice outside of these lessons, right? These lessons, I'm in front of my computer. I want to get out there and actually swing sticks. Basic strikes, right? You want to start with your basic strikes. I've been advocating it for the last 3 lessons, for the last 3 weeks, and I'll be advocating it for at least 20 more lessons, probably. But yeah, your basic swings. They form the core of our sword fighting. Get them right. Remember all the things that we discussed last week, right? So stance, right? Get the right stance. Stepping with each cut, okay. Step with each cut. Now we've done some different steps this week, so that means that I can integrate those different steps into my basic cuts. I can, cut with the side step, cut with the side step, or cut with the diagonal step forward, cut with the diagonal step forward. So you can integrate that into your basic attack routine. So first, you do the 8 basic attacks forward. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, I am running out of space, so I'm going to go backwards. 5, 6, 7, 8. I can exactly do 4 steps. And so now maybe I want to do the basic attacks, but every time I take a diagonal step. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and diagonally backwards. 6, 7 thrust, and 8 thrust. Right? That's what you get for focusing on 2 things, Sasha. So yeah, your basic attacks, but do them in varying steps. I could do the basic attacks with just side steps. 1, I never advance a single inch. for good measure, I'm doing my Ansetzen thrusts, Absetzen thrusts at the end. Right? So these are some things that you can keep in mind. And remember the 8 things. Stance, stepping, cutting from guard to guard, breathing, Anzet, Langenord. Aaron, help me out here.
Targets.
Targets and distance. All right? So make sure that you get the most distance. Make sure that you're aiming your cuts at a fictional target. Interesting thing, if you have a mirror that you could set up in a space where you can cut safely, special boy, but then you can cut against your mirror so you can aim at yourself. Like this cut, I'm going to aim at my shoulder. This cut, I'm going to aim my other shoulder. This cut, I'm aiming at my armpit. This cut, I'm aiming at my armpit, right? So you can see for yourself, okay, this is what I need to aim for. Yeah, so 8 basic cuts, and you can do them in all sorts of variations. With stepping, keep in mind the things that make a cut a good cut, and then go from there. Then you can practice your Absetzen thrusts from here, where you do the thrust, where you start in Flug on the right, and you end your thrust in Ox on the left. And as you do that, you take a step sideways. And then you bring it back to your left, and then you can do it at just a step left. And every time, you got to mention, catch the sword, thrust in. 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 Before I forget, and before people comment, Absetzen is not only useful against thrusts. Absetzen is also useful against cuts. If you have a partner, lucky you, who also does sword fighting, luckier you, then you can practice this against each other. One throws a simple cut, and then the other does the sideways step and thrust in. Be mindful that you judge your distance right? Do this very slowly, else you thrust each other in the face. Then you don't have a partner anymore, all right? So make sure you keep that in mind. So, Absetzen, step to the right, thrust into an ox. And make sure that your sword is only going forward. Your tip is only advancing towards the enemy. Here, thrust here. Only advancing towards the enemy. Keep your tip on your target. Right? Too often do I see this in Absetzen, where the tip is pointing up, tip is not pointing towards the enemy, they're not practicing Ansätze, and then they're like, but why is my tip not hitting the enemy? And it's because it never was pointing at your enemy. Start with Ansätze. Aim your tip at the enemy. Scoop the sword, thrust in. Aim your tip at the enemy, scoop your sword, thrust in. Keep aiming at the enemy. Keep your Ansätze there. Yeah.
I would also like to put out that if you're practicing at home, and you notice what Sasha's been doing without I think telling you it, is that when he's doing the basic cuts and stepping forward, it's taking a single step, a single passing step. But when he's doing it side to side to avoid going forward because he doesn't have enough space,
you get the
2 steps per cut.
1, 2, 1, 2.
Yeah.
Yes, but we count that as 1 step. So sorry for not. But yeah, you're right. It's a little 1-2 step.
It's a 1-2 step. But if you're advancing with passing steps, you only pass a single step.
Yep.
The manuals are very weird about this. They're not very clear on when you're supposed to take which type of step. But yeah, this is what we've come up with so far.
Yep. So do these exercises throughout the week. 8 basic cuts and your Absetzen. And I hope we will see you next week again. So with that, I would like to finish the stream with the official Zwaardkring greet. So we take our feet, put them in the little L, point our sword down. We bring our sword up, say the magic words, Grüß dich.
Grüß dich.
And thank you so much. I hope to see you all next week.